I retired at 63 with what my financial advisor described as a comfortable but not exceptional retirement fund. And I am 78 years old, and I have more money now than I had on the day I retired. And I want to tell you how that happened, because I think the how is genuinely surprising and genuinely useful, and is not the version of this story that most people expect when they hear the outcome. My name is Thomas. I am 78 years old, and I want to talk about something that I believe most people approaching retirement fundamentally misunderstand, which is the financial character of the retirement years themselves, the specific ways in which those years can generate and preserve and even increase wealth if the person entering them understand what is actually available and approaches it with the deliberate attention that the working years trained them to bring to the financial dimensions of their lives. I want to say first that I am not a financial professional, and I am not offering investment advice, and what I am offering is the specific and personal account of a man who retired 15 years ago, and who has watched his financial position improve across those 15 years in ways that surprised him, and that he wants to describe honestly, because the honest description might be worth something to someone who is approaching retirement with the assumption that the retirement years are primarily a period of financial drawdown rather than a period of genuine financial opportunity. I grew up in Coventry, the son of a factory worker who retired at 65 with a state pension and a very modest occupational pension, and who managed the last 20 years of his life on those resources with the specific and practiced economy of a man who had never had much and who knew precisely how to make what he had last. My father was not rich in the way I want to tell you about being rich, and he was not trying to be rich in that way, and the model he provided was not the model I am describing, but he gave me something that was essential to the outcome I am describing, which was the practical intelligence about money that comes from a life lived in genuine contact with its realities, rather than at the comfortable distance from those realities that adequate income sometimes provides. I was a secondary school teacher for 38 years. Teaching is not a profession that generates significant personal wealth in the ordinary course of its practice, but it is a profession with a defined benefit pension, which for the purposes of what I am describing, is among the most valuable financial instruments available to anyone who has access to one and who understands how to think about it correctly, which most people do not, because the defined benefit pension is a guaranteed income rather than a pot of money, and most people's financial thinking is organized around pots of money rather than guaranteed incomes, and the two things require different mental frameworks. The defined benefit pension was the foundation of everything I am going to describe. I want to say that clearly because I think the 5 reasons I am going to offer you are only available to someone who has established a financial foundation that covers the genuine necessities of retirement living without requiring the drawdown of invested assets to do so. And the defined benefit pension was that foundation for me, and the equivalent for you might be something different, but must exist in some form for what I am describing to be possible. If the necessities of your retirement living require the consumption of your assets, the dynamics I am describing do not apply. And the first order of business is to address the necessity question before the opportunity question. With the necessities covered by the pension, the retirement years produced 5 specific mechanisms through which my financial position has improved rather than deteriorated, and I want to describe each of them with the specificity that makes them actionable rather than merely interesting. The first is the elimination of the working costs that consumed a significant portion of my income across the working years, and that most people do not adequately account for when they calculate what retirement will require. I am talking about the commuting costs and the professional clothing costs and the daily food costs of a person who is not at home during the working day, and the various other expenses that employment imposes and that retire along with the employee. The elimination of these costs, in my case, represented a reduction in my monthly expenditure of approximately 1/5 of what the working years had required, and the reduction was immediate and permanent and freed up a portion of the pension income that I had not expected to be available for the investment and the saving that I want to describe. The second mechanism is the time dividend, which is the most important and the most consistently overlooked of the 5. Retirement provides something that the working years systematically deny, which is the time to attend properly to your own financial affairs, to research the options available to you, and to make genuinely considered decisions rather than the hurried and often suboptimal decisions that people with limited time make about money. Because the alternative to the hurried decision is no decision, and no decision is usually worse than the hurried one. In retirement, I had time to read, to understand, to compare, to reconsider, and the quality of the financial decisions I made in the first 3 years of retirement was substantially higher than the quality of the decisions I had made in the working years, not because my intelligence had improved, but because the time available for the intelligence to operate had expanded dramatically. The specific application of this time dividend, in my case, was the thorough review and restructuring of my investment and savings arrangements in the first year of retirement, a review that identified fees I was paying that I had not examined carefully enough during the working years, and that were consuming a meaningful percentage of the returns my investments were generating, arrangements that were not optimally structured for the tax position of a retired person, and opportunities that I had been aware of, in a general sense, during the working years, but had not had the time to understand well enough to act on. The restructuring produced genuine improvement in the financial performance of what I had without any additional risk and without any significant additional capital, simply through the application of the time and the attention that the working years had not allowed. The third mechanism is what I think of as the knowledge compounding that the second mechanism enables. The time dividend produces not only better immediate decisions, but the gradual accumulation of genuine financial knowledge. The kind of knowledge that comes from sustained attention over years rather than from occasional urgent attention when a crisis requires it. And the knowledge accumulation has a compounding quality in the sense that each year's understanding builds on the previous years in ways that produce an increasingly sophisticated relationship to your own finances that continues to generate better outcomes with each passing year. I understood index funds adequately when I retired, and I understand them well now. I understood the basics of tax-efficient investing when I retired, and I understand the specific applications and the specific optimizations well now. I understood the general principles of estate and inheritance planning when I retired, and I have spent 15 years refining my understanding to the point where the specific arrangements I have made are substantially better for my wife and my children than the default arrangements would have been. The knowledge I have now would have been available to me during the working years if I had had the time to develop it, and the 15 years of retirement have produced the time, and the time has produced the knowledge, and the knowledge has produced the outcomes. The fourth mechanism is the reduction of impulsive financial behavior that the structure and the pace of retirement naturally produces. The working years are years of stress and of the specific kind of financial impulsivity that stress generates. The purchase of comfort and convenience and the various forms of spending that serve the emotional management of a demanding daily life rather than the genuine material needs or genuine pleasures of the person making them. Retirement, for people who approach it well, reduces the stress that generates the impulsivity, and the reduction of the impulsivity reduces the expenditure that the impulsivity was producing, and the reduction of that expenditure frees up resources that were previously consumed by it. I spent money during the working years in ways that I would not spend it now, not dramatically but consistently, in the small and habitual ways of a person whose time poverty made convenience expensive and whose stress made comfort feel like necessity. And the retirement years have produced a cleaner and more deliberate relationship to expenditure that has meaningfully reduced the portion of income consumed without meaningfully reducing the quality of daily life. Because most of what the impulsive spending was providing was not quality of life, but management of the working life that no longer requires management. The fifth mechanism is the most interesting, and the one that I think most people would not anticipate, which is the genuine and substantial reduction in the desire for things that most people experience in the retirement years, if they approach those years with any degree of genuine reflection. The wanting of things, the consumer appetite that the working life generates, and that advertising and social comparison, and the general culture of acquisition sustains across the decades of the working years, tends to diminish in retirement in ways that have a direct financial effect. And the diminishing is not a deprivation, but a liberation, the liberation of a person who is understood through the accumulated experience of a long life. what actually produces genuine satisfaction, and what was always only producing the temporary relief of want, rather than the genuine pleasure of receipt. I want less now than I wanted at 55. Not because I am resigned to having less, but because I genuinely want less, because the things I actually enjoy and that actually sustain the quality of my daily life are not the things that money purchases in the proportions that the working years led me to believe they were. And the genuine wanting of less means the genuine spending of less, and the genuine spending of less means the genuine accumulation of more. And the accumulation is not the goal, but the natural result of a life being lived at the scale it actually requires, rather than at the scale the working years artificially inflated. I retired at 63 with a comfortable but not exceptional retirement fund, and I am 78, and I have more than I had on the day I retired. The 5 mechanisms I have described are the reasons. They are not secrets, and they are not exotic financial strategies, and they are available to anyone who retires with the genuine necessities covered, and who approaches the retirement years with deliberate and sustained attention to their own financial affairs that those years uniquely allow. The retirement years are not only the years of spending what you built, they can be the years of continuing to build, not through the labor of the working years, but through the attention and the knowledge and the deliberateness that the working years never had the time to fully apply. That possibility is available. It is not automatic. It requires the intention and the engagement and the willingness to treat the financial dimension of the retirement years as something that deserves genuine attention, rather than simply the passive receipt of what the working years produced. Pay attention. The retirement years are paying attention to you. Return the attention. The returns are real.